Monarchy King and Monarchy Queen, two cards built to work in tandem with one another. Nidoking's Power Gene Pokebody gives a 10 damage boost to all attacks used by Nidoran Female, Nidorina, Nidoqueen, Nidoran Male, and Nidorinos. Multiple Power Genes can stack if you have multiple Nidokings in play. For 2 energy, Earth Poison deals 40 damage and gives you Auto Poison if the defending Pokemon already has a damage counter on it. And then for 4 energy, you can Snipe for 60. On the Queenly side of things, we have the Pokebody Family Bonds, which gives free retreats to all of your Nidoran Females, Nidorinas, Nidoran Male, Nidorinos, and Nidokings. Extremely useful for your Nidoking since they have a retreat cost of 3. It's just a shame it doesn't work on your Nidoqueens, which have a retreat cost of 2. For a Grass Energy, you poison the defending Pokemon, but instead of 1 damage counter between turns, you put 2. And then for 3 energy, Power Lariat is going to deal 40 damage plus 10 more damage for each evolved Pokemon that you have in play. So ideally for this attack, you're going to have at least 3 other Nidoqueens, Nidokings, or Pidgeots in play. 2 powerful single prize Pokemon, both with the ability to poison and the option to deal very heavy damage. With Nidoking sniping for 60 is a huge deal. You're going to be able to knock out a lot of basic unevolved Pokemon on your opponent's bench, or in the case of Nidoqueen, dealing a huge amount of damage just for having evolved Pokemon in play, which is something that most decks are going to be doing anyway. Power Lariat is also going to get incrementally more powerful based on how many Power Gene Nidoking you have in play. Just by having 2 other Nidoking on your bench, Power Lariat's going to deal an extra 40 damage. Your Nidorans are going to provide some solid setup support. Nidoran Male lets you put another Nidoran into play straight from your deck, and Nidoran Female lets you dig through your deck until you hit a basic, and then put that Pokemon into your hand. Nidorina has a built-in Celios network to help search your deck for evolution cards, putting 2 of them into your hand. Nidorino doesn't provide any setup support, but it does get some damage counters on the opposing Pokemon so that Nidoking can get that auto poison next turn. As mentioned earlier, Pidgeot's going to be your primary way to search out those key evolution cards, stadiums, energy cards, whatever you need on that turn. Pidgeot's going to go let you get it. Getting your kings and queens into play as quickly as possible, getting them powered up, and just start attacking. There's not much more to this deck other than get Nidokings and Nidoqueens into play and use their powerful attacks to deal massive damage while also supporting one another. Nidoqueen is the more efficient attacker with Power Lariat, dealing more damage for less energy, but early game Earth Poison is going to be much more impactful. Bound Crush is rarely going to be the play, but every now and then you're going to have the energy available to put a Nidoking into the active position and get an easy kill by sniping a benched Pokemon that already has some damage on it, or just getting a small basic that hasn't evolved yet. Your stadium picks really come down to what you think is going to be most effective against the anticipated metagame. Ancient Tomb if you think you're going to be up against a bunch of water and or grass types, or perhaps you do want to hit for a weakness against Pokemon like Dark Tyranitar, but you don't want to come up against Pokemon that resist fighting like opposing Pidgeots or Rayquaza. In those cases, Magnetic Storm is going to be your friend. If you want to straight up prevent the Jirachi teleporter loop, Mount Moon has you covered. And of course, Desert Ruins for some good old EX hate. As you can see from this sample deck list, we go hard on just getting evolution cards into play. Got a 3-2-3 line of both types of Nidorans. Both of those Nidorans get other Nidorans into play. 3 Dunsparce that get more Pokemon into play. 2-1-2 line of Pidgeot to either grab those evolution cards for you or grab cards that grab those evolutions for you. 4 copies of Rare Candy, 4 copies of Celios Network. You want Power Lariat to be dealing as much damage as possible. Another part of that is getting multiple Nidokings into play. Unfortunately, Nidoqueen's Pokebody doesn't apply to itself or other Nidoqueens, so every now and then you do find yourself in a scenario where you need to get out of the active position, and the only way to do it without paying 2 is to use Switch or Warp Point. On the energy side, we have 10 fighting energy and 4 double colorless. No grass, because if you have a Nidoqueen in play, you don't care about using Toxic. That attack is so suboptimal in this deck when the entire point is just play Pokemon and evolve them. Get Power Lariat, powered up as fast as you can. That means attaching those 3 energy, getting multiple Nidokings into play, and making sure that every single Pokemon you have is evolved. One of the reasons we have the Mr. Briney's Compassion is to get Dunsparces out of the way after you've used Strike and Run, so that you can replace it on the bench with a Pokemon that can evolve and boost the damage of Power Lariat. This is a cool deck. It's a fun deck, it can be very powerful, but you may have already noted some pretty big weaknesses here, the biggest being that it gets absolutely trashed by lock decks. Pidgeot is affected by Battle Frontier. Everything in this deck is susceptible to ATM Rock. ATM Rock alone takes all the power out of Power Lariat. And because the goal of this deck is to have as many Pokemon in play as possible, as many evolved Pokemon in play as possible, ATM Rock is going to hit hard and score your opponent multiple knockouts with a well-planned damage spread rock combo. So even though Monarchy hits Dark Tyranitar for weakness and can OHKO Dark Tyranitar, it will still oftentimes lose to that deck because of those locking features. Because of these issues, Monarchy is not a top archetype in the 2005 metagame. You may ask why I would even make a video on it if it's not a part of the 2005 metagame. Well, for the views, Jimmy. It's also because I really like Nidoking. I like decks that play off of the Nidoking, Nidoqueen dynamic, and so that you, the viewer, can understand the evolution of this deck throughout the 2005 season. To understand why no one expected to see Nidoqueen at the 2005 World Championships, let alone win the entire tournament. No, it wasn't this build, but this build is where the idea came from. People playtesting Monarchy noticed that Power Lariat was an extremely powerful attack all on its own. Nidoqueen didn't need no man boosting her damage output. The 10, 20, 30 extra damage provided by Nidoking was rarely a deciding factor between Power Lariat being a 2-hit knockout or an OHKO on an opponent. So what if we cut the Nidoking line entirely and gave Nidoqueen a check against lock decks to make sure that ATM Rock wasn't a factor we had to worry about? The pros were able to make that happen with the follow-up evolution of this deck, the Queendom archetype, which we will discuss in further detail in a follow-up video. The point I want to make here is that you never know how good a card can be until you actually play with it. Nidoqueen doesn't look like all that powerful of a card. That's why people thought they had to pair it with Nidoking to improve it. Through playtesting, people found out that not only was Nidoqueen better than we thought it was, but it never needed support at all, aside from teching against its biggest opponent, which was Rocklock. Nidoking would consistently get stomped by Gorobus, but Nidoqueen didn't have to worry about big grass types yet. Only by actually playing with cards can you find this type of potential. If you have a card that you think is unique or interesting, that you have faith in, you can figure out a way to make it work. Is it always going to be a brand new archetype that rocks the entire metagame and wins you a world championship? No. But you're never going to discover that archetype unless you're playing with a bunch of different cards. It's as true today as it was back then. Even though the EX era is kind of the best era that the TCG has ever produced, and there's really no comparing it to modern day Pokemon, but that's just my opinion. My majorly correct opinion that I am open to discussing down in the comments. While we're at it, we can discuss how Nidoking's 3D renders actually undermine everything that's cool about its design. The 2D sprites in Pokemon had so much personality that 3D models just aren't going to be able to capture yet. Hopefully they get better. I thank you so much for watching the video. If you want to show some support, just like, subscribe, watch more videos. All the YouTube stuff goes a long way. I'm going to keep making vintage Pokemon TCG content, so stay tuned for more. Go watch the other playlists. I'll see you on the next one.